himself, with two long banners that hung down in the still air, their dark armor newly lacquered so it glistened in the sun, and silk streamers of red and white and black tied below the heads of their lances. They raised a cheer when Rand appeared, his sword belt with its gilded dragon buckle strapped over a red coat heavy with gold. Althor! 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 Filled the courtyard. People crowding the archers' balconies joined in, Tyron and Carianan in their silks and laces, who just a week before had no doubt cheered Colaver as loudly. Men and women who would as soon he had never returned to Carian, some of them waving their arms and giving voice. He raised the dragon scepter to acknowledge them, and they roared louder. A thunderous roll of drums and the blare of trumpets rose through the cheers, produced by a dozen more of Dobrain's men, who wore crimson tabards with the black and white disc on the chest, half carrying long trumpets draped in identical cloths, the other half with kettle drums also decorated, slung on either side of the horses. 5 Aes Sedai in their shawls came to meet him as he descended the broad stairs. At least, they glided toward him. Alana gave him one searching look with those big, dark, penetrating eyes. The tiny knot of emotions in his skull said she was calmer, more relaxed than he ever remembered. Then she made a small motion, and Min touched his arm and went aside with her. Bera and the others made small curtsies, inclining their heads slightly, as Aiel streamed out of the palace behind him. Nandera led 200 maidens. They were not about to be outshone by the Oathbreakers, and Kamar, a rangy, bent-beaked Darine, grayer than Nandera and half a head taller than Rand, led 200 Sayadun, who would not be outshone by Fardarai's Mai, let alone Tyrianan. They swung past on either side of him in the Aes Sedai to ring the courtyard. Bera, like a proud farm wife, and Alana, like some darkly beautiful queen in their green-fringed shawls, and plump Raphella, even darker wrapped in her blue, watching him anxiously, and cool-eyed Phaedron, yet another green, her thin braids worked with colored beads, and slim Marana in her gray, whose frown made Raphella seem a picture of Aes Sedai serenity. 5. Where are Karuna and Varen? He demanded. I called for all of you. So you did, my Lord Dragon, Bera answered smoothly. She made another curtsy, too. Only the slightest dip, but it took him aback. We could not find Varen. She is somewhere in the Aiel tents. Questioning her smooth tone faltered for one instant. The prisoners, I believe, in an attempt to learn what was planned once they reached Tar Valon. Once he reached Tar Valon, she knew enough not to put that where anyone could hear. And Karuna is
hey, just chilling. How you
consulting
doing, bro?
with Soralia on a matter of protocol.
Hope you're doing good.
But I'm quite certain she will be more than happy to join us if you send a personal summons to Soralia. I could go myself if you... He waved that away. 5 should be enough. Perhaps Varen could learn something.
I'm about to.
Did he want to know? And Karuna. Matter of protocol. I'm glad you are getting on with the wise ones.
What
Varen
fight?
started to speak, then closed her mouth firmly. Whatever Alana was saying to Min, scarlet spots had flared in Min's cheeks, and she had raised her chin, though oddly she seemed to be replying calmly enough. He wondered whether she would tell him. One thing he was sure of about women was that every last one had secret places in her heart, sometimes shared with another woman, but never with a man. The only thing he was sure of about women. I didn't come out here to stand all day, he said irritably. The Aes Sedai had arranged themselves with Bera in the lead, the others half a step back. If it had not been her, it would have been Karuna.
No
Their
shit.
own arrangements, not his. He did not
No,
really
I
care
didn't
as
see
long
that
as they
fight.
broke their oaths. And he might have left it alone, if not for Min and Alana. Marana will speak for you from now on. You will take your orders from her. By the suddenly widened eyes, you would have thought he had slapped every one of them, including Marana. Even Alana's head whipped around. Why should they be startled? True, Bera and Karuna had done almost all the talking since Dumai's Wells, But Marana had been the ambassador sent to him at Camelin. "If you are ready, men," he said, and without waiting for a
Oh,
reply,
damn.
strode out into the court.
That's crazy.
The big, fiery-eyed
Got him
black
that bad,
gelding
huh?
back from Wise Wells had been brought out for him, with a high-cantled saddle all worked in gold, and a crimson saddlecloth embroidered with a disc of black and white at each corner. The trappings suited the animal and his name, Taida Shah, and the old tongue, Lord of Glory. Horse and trappings both suited the dragon reborn. As he mounted, Min led up the mouse-colored mare she had ridden back, snugging on her riding gloves before swinging into the saddle. "Sayera is a fine animal," she said, patting the mare's arched neck. "I wish she was mine. I like her name, too. We call the flower a blue eye around Berlin, and they grow everywhere in the spring." "She's yours," Rand said. Whichever Aes Sedai the mare belonged to would not refuse to sell to him. He would give Karuna 1,000 crowns for Taida Shah. She could not complain then. The finest stallion of Tyrant bloodstock
Let's
never
do a
cost
dab
a
real
penny.
quick.
"Did you have an interesting conversation with Alana?" "Nothing that would interest you," she said offhandedly. But a faint touch of red stained her cheeks. He snorted softly, then raised his voice. "Lord Dobrain, I've kept the sea folk waiting long enough, I think." The procession drew crowds along the broad avenues and filled the windows and rooftops as word
Got me a
raced ahead.
couple new
20 of
nectar
Dobrain's lancers
collectors.
led to clear the way, along with 30 maidens and as many black eyes. Then drummers, booming away, drum, 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 drum. The trumpeters punctuating that with flourishes.
That one was
Shouts
actually
from the onlookers nearly drowned
a
drums and
backwoods
trumpets alike.
one. Came with
A
the,
wordless roar that could have been rage as easily as approbation.
excuse me, cool little
The
case to
banners
put it in.
streamed out just ahead of Dobrain and behind Rand. The white dragon banner and the scarlet banner of the light, and Baal Dail trotted alongside the lancers, whose streamers also floated in the air. Now and then,
Alright, got him today.
yelled at him.
Well, I got this
Maybe they
one.
did not hate him. Maybe they only feared. It had to do.
This is the
A train worthy of any king,
backwoods
Moran
one.
said loudly.
You can see it.
"Then it's enough for the Dragon Reborn," he replied sharply. "Will you stay back? And you too, men."
Damn.
Other rooftops held assassins. The arrow or crossbow bolt meant for him would not find its target in a woman today. They did fall back behind his big black, for all of 3 paces, and then they were right beside him again, men telling him what Berlain had written about the sea folk on the ships, about the Jendai prophecy and the Koromor, and Marana adding what she knew of the prophecy, though she admitted that was not very much, little more than men. Watching the rooftops, he listened with half an ear. He did not hold Sayadini, but he could feel it in Dashiva and the other 2, right behind him. He did not feel the tingle that would announce the Aes Sedai embracing the source, but he had told them not to, without permission. Perhaps he should change that. They did seem to be keeping their oath. How could they not? They were Aes Sedai. A fine thing if he took an assassin's blade while one of the sisters tried to decide whether serving meant saving him or obeying meant not channeling. "Why are you laughing?" Min wanted to know. Sayera cranked closer. She smiled up. "This is no laughing matter, my lord Dragon," Moran said acidly to Melisande. "The other on the air can be very particular. Any people grow fastidious when it comes to their policies." "The world is a laughing matter," he told her. Min laughed along with him, but Marana sniffed and went right back to the sea boat as soon as he stopped.
Do a first dab
At the
with
river, the high city
this
walls ran
one.
out into the water, flanking long gray
Then
stone
we'll try
docks
the
that
next
stretched out
other
from
one.
the quay. River ships and boats and barges of every kind and size were tied everywhere, the crews on deck to see the commotion. But the vessel Rand saw stood ready and waiting, lashed at the end of the dock where all the laborers had already. A longboat it was called, a low, narrow splinter without any masts, just one staff in the bow, 4 faces tall, topped by and another at the stern. Nearly 30 paces in length and lined with as many long oars, it could not carry the cargo a sailing vessel the same size would, but it had no need of the wind either, and with a shallow draft, it could travel day and night, using rowers in shifts. Longboats ran the rivers with cargoes of importance and seemed appropriate. The captain bowed repeatedly as Rand came down the boarding ramp with Min on his arm and the Aes Sedai and Ashaman at his heels. Elva Shayna was even skinnier than his craft, in a yellow coat of Morandian cut that hung to his knees. "It's an honor to be carrying you, my Lord Dragon," he murmured, mopping his bald head with a large handkerchief. "An honor it is. An honor indeed. An honor." Plainly the man would rather have had his ship brimful of live vipers. He blinked at the Aes Sedai's shawls and stared at their ageless faces and licked his lips, eyes flickering back to Rand uneasily. The Ashaman dropped his mouth open once he put their black coats together with rumors. He avoided so much as a question. Shayna watched Dobrain lead the men with the banners aboard, and the trumpeters and the drummers lugging their drums, then eyed the horsemen lining the dock as if he suspected they were Nandera with 20 maidens, and Tamara with 20 black eyes, all with shufa wrapped around their heads, though unveiled, made the captain step hastily to put the Aes Sedai between him and them. The Aiel
Make sure you put this
heartbeat that needing to veil
decal on this.
But the
Very
seafolk
good.
might well know what a veil meant, and it would hardly do for them to think they were under attack. Rand thought
Dude, it's
Shayna's
pretty
handkerchief
much
might yet rub away
rubbed
what
off.
gray fringe of hair he had left. The longboat swept away from the dock on its long oars, the two banners rippling in the bows, and the drums pounding and the trumpets blaring. Out in the river, people appeared on the decks of ships to watch, even climbed into
I'm
the
gonna try one with this one next.
On the seafolk ship, they came
This
out
one
too,
is
many in bright colors, unlike the draft boats.
I've used it already. I'm not sure how I feel about this
The white
one.
spray was a
I
larger
think it might be
craft
mainly
than
this,
most yet
the
somehow
part you take
sleeker
the
as
hit
well,
from, because it's
with two large masts raked
kind
back
of
sharply,
small.
and spars laid
But
across them
it is one
squarely,
solid
where nearly all
piece.
the other ships had
You don't have to
slanting
worry
spars,
about
longer than the masts,
like
held much
that
more
or
sails.
one of these.
Everything about it spoke of difference, but in one thing, Rand,
But it does have a
the
wider
outlander had to be like everyone else.
tip,
They
so
could
it
either
should be
lead
for
following on their own, or be forced to it.
excuse
The
me.
prophecies
So it
said he would
should be
bind
for a
together the
better
people of every land.
dab.
The north shall he tie to the east, and the west shall be bound to the south, it said. And no one could be allowed to stand aside. He knew that. Sending out orders from his bath, he had not had an opportunity to give details of what he intended on using white spray. The details produced grins among the Ashaman, as expected. Well, in an illusional grin, the Shiva blinked absently. And frowns among the Aiel, also as expected. They did not like being left behind. Dobrain put it not. He knew he was only here for show today. What Rand did not expect was the Aiel reaction. "It shall be as you command, my Lord Dragon," Marana said, making one of those small curtsies. The other four exchanged glances, but they were curtsying and murmuring "as you command" right behind them. Not one protest, not one frown, not a single haughty stare, or recital of why it should be done any way but what he wanted. But he began to trust them. Or would they find some Aes Sedai way to wriggle around their oath as soon as his back was turned? "They will keep their word," Min murmured abruptly, just as if she had read his thoughts. With an arm wrapped around his, and both hands holding his sleeve, she kept her voice for his ears alone. "I just saw these 5 in your hand," she added in case he did not understand. He was not sure he could fix his mind around, even if she had seen it in He did not have long to try. The longboat flew through the water, and in no time at all was backing oars some 20 paces from the much taller white spray. Drums and trumpets fell silent, and
Yeah,
moved
it's
gently,
okay.
making a bridge of air laced with fire that connected the longboat's railing to that of the seafolk ship. He started to cross. That of the Ashaman, walking up. He had expected him to falter, at least at first, but she simply walked at his side as though there were stones beneath her green-heeled boots. I trust you, she said quietly. She smiled, too. Partly a comforting smile, and partly he thought the once more. She would trust if she knew he was as far as he could weave a bridge like this. One pace farther, 1 foot, and the whole thing would have given way at the first step. At that point, it became like trying to lift yourself with the power, an impossibility. Even the Forsaken did not know why, any more than they knew why a woman could make a longer bridge than a man, even if she was not as strong. It was not a matter of weight. Any amount of weight. Trey's railing, he stopped, standing in midair. For all Marana's descriptions, the people staring back at him were a shock. Dark women and bare-chested men with colorful slashes that dangled to the knee, and gold or silver chains around their necks and rings in their ears, in their noses of all places on some of the women, who wore a rainbow of blouses above their dark baggy breeches. None had any more expression than an Aes Sedai who was trying hard. 4 of the women, despite being barefoot like the rest, wore bright silks, 2 of them brocades. They had more necklaces and earrings than anyone else, with a chain strung millions running from an earring to a ring in the side of the nose. They said nothing, only stood together watching him, sniffing at small lacy golden boxes that hung from chains around their necks. He addressed himself to them. I am the Dragon Reborn. I am the Coromor. A collective sigh ran through the crew, not among the 4 women, though. I am Areen Din Togara Two Winds, Wave Mistress to Clan Shodain, announced the one.
The books I'm listening to,
a handsome,
they're not bad. It's
red brocade, wearing 5 fat little
the Wheel of Time series by
there were white
Robert Jordan.
Straight black hair, and fine lines at the corners of her eyes. She had an impressive dignity. I speak here for the mistress of the ships. If it pleases the light, the Coromor may come aboard. For some reason, she gave a start.
They're good books to read too. I've read them, the series.
Rand stepped onto the deck with me,
but they're definitely
he let the bridge
not thin books.
But immediately,
And then they range between
in short order, the Ashaman and the Aes Sedai were the sisters no more flustered than men had been.
about
Perhaps 1 or 2 did straighten their skirts.
700 to 1,000
they were
pages.
Still not so easy around the Ashaman as they pretended. The 4 sea folk women took one look at the Aes Sedai and immediately gathered in a close huddle, whispering. Areen did a lot of the talking, and so did a young pretty
But
woman.
I have them because I have my
together. But the pair in plain
my
silk
Audible
put in occasional
account.
comments. Marana coughed delicately and spoke softly into the hand she used to cover it. I heard her name you the Coromor. The Athaan Mier are great bargainers, I've heard. But I think she gave away something then. Nodding, Rand glanced down at Min. She was squinting at the sea folk women, but as soon as she noticed his look, she shook her head ruefully. She saw nothing yet that might help him.
Well, I'd like to read
so calmly, they might never
if I was able to get to the library on a regular basis. I would read the books more often, but I like the audio books because I could put it to play when I lay down to sleep at night and put like a 30-minute timer on it, and then that 30 minutes it goes off so I can actually fall asleep listening to it.
And also 8 earrings, though her earrings, nose ring, and the chain that ran between was finer than Areen's or Shallan's. The welcome of my ship to you, Dara said.
Hell
and
yeah.
The grace of the light be upon you until you leave.
No, if I had the room, I would definitely have a good book collection going.
Windfinder of White Spray. Only 3 rings hung from each of Tavel's ears, fine like those of the sail mistress. She looked younger than Shallan, no older than himself. Areen took it up again, gesturing toward the raised stern of the ship. We will speak in my cabin if it pleases you. A soarer is not a large vessel, Rand al'Thor, and the cabin is small. If it pleases you to come alone, all here stand surety for your safety. So, from the Coromor to plain Rand al'Thor, she would take back what she had given if she could. He was about to open his mouth and agree. Anything to get this done. Green was already moving that way, gesturing for him to follow, the other woman with her, when Marana gave another tiny cough. The Windfinders can channel, she murmured hastily into her hand. You should take 2 sisters with you, or they'll feel they've gained the upper hand. Rand frowned. The upper hand? He was the Dragon Reborn, after all. Still, I will be pleased to come, Wave Mistress, but Min here goes everywhere with me. He patted Min's hand on his arm. She had not let go an instant, and Hareen nodded. Topple was already holding the door open. Dara made one of those small bows, gesturing him toward it. And Dashiva, of course. The man gave a start at his name, as if he had been asleep. At least he was not staring wide-eyed around the deck like Flynn and Narishma. Staring at the women. Stories spoke of the alluring beauty and grace of Seafolk women, and Rand could certainly see that. They walked.
I don't know how to see if there is or not.
Step, swaying.
If there is, I definitely have to get that.
Not brought the men here to ogle. Keep your eyes open, he told them harshly. Narishma colored, jerking himself stiffly.
So I know me and my brother have watched, I can't remember what it was on, but it was actually
Men looked up at him with the tiniest
a GG documentary.
Hareen nodded a little more.
If you got to see like them talking to his mom, his brother.
He also wore 5 fat little rings in each ear. She waved him away even more impatiently. As it please you, Rand al'Thor, she said. And of course, Rand added, as though an afterthought, I must have Marana and Rafella. He was not certain why he chose the second name. Perhaps because the plump tyrant sister was the only one not green, except Marana. But to his surprise, Marana smiled in approval. For that matter, Bera nodded, and so did Fealdrin and Alana. Hareen did not approve.
Yeah, I like some of Black Flag. It's been a while since I listened to any of it, but yeah.
Quite so pleasantly as before. Once he was inside the stern cabin, where everything except a few brass-bound chests seemed built into the walls, Rand was not so sure the woman had not gained whatever she wanted just bringing him there. For one thing, he was forced to stand hunched over, even between the roof beams, or whatever they were called on a ship. He had read several books about ships, but none mentioned that. The narrow table was down the deck. Unlatched the chair arm. Sit the table. There were only 8 chairs. Arranged at the far end, her back to the stern.
And that was an empty bowl.
With her windfinder to her left, and the sailmistress to her right, and Topple below her. Marana and Rafella took the chairs below Shallan, while Min sat to Rand's left. Dashiva, with no chair, took a place beside the door, standing upright quite easily, though the roof beams almost brushed his head too. A young woman in a bright blue dress, with one thin brought thick cups of tea, grew black and bitter. That's
pretty much, because watch.
He left his cup on the table.
Let me take a little drink real quick.
He hated being confined. Thoughts of being doubled inside the chest.
Show you a little trick.
And it was all he could do to rein his temper. The stone of Tyr has fallen. The Aiel have come over the dragon wall.
I don't know if it was a trick, but
all the parts of your Jendai
how much resin's in here.
I am the Coromor.
Because the way this is made, all the resin collects down here before it even starts to get clogged.
That may be so, as it pleases the light, but it is so, Rand snapped, despite a warning glance from Marana. She went so far as to nudge his leg with her foot. He ignored that, too. The cabin walls seemed closer somehow. What is it that you don't believe, waved Mistress? That Aes Sedai serve me? Rafella, Marana, he gestured sharply. All he wanted was for them to come to him and be seen to come, but they set down their cups and rose gracefully, glided to either side of him, and knelt. Each took one of his hands in both of hers and pressed her lips to the back of it, right on the shining golden-maned head of the dragon that wound around his forearm. He just managed to conceal his shock, not taking his eyes from Hareen. Her face went a little gray. Aes Sedai serve me, and so will the sea folk. He motioned the sisters back to their seats. Oddly, they looked a touch surprised. That is what the Jedi prophecy says. The sea folk will serve the Coromor. I am the Coromor. Yes, but there is the matter of the bargain. That word was plainly capitalized in Hareen's tone. The Jedi prophecy says you will bring us to glory, and all the seas of the world will be ours. As we give to you, you must give to us. If I do not make the bargain well, Nesta will hang me naked in the rigging by my ankles.
Oh, yes. Nothing like just straight herb. I feel you on that, bro.
A look of utter horror stole across her face as those words came out of her mouth, and her black eyes went wider and wider by the word with disbelief. Her wayfinder goggled at her, and Dara and Tubble tried so hard not to, their eyes fastened to the table, that it seemed their faces might break. And suddenly Rand understood. ta'veren. He had seen the effects, the sudden moments when the least likely thing happened because he was near. But he had never known what was going on before until it was finished. Easing his legs as best he could, he leaned his arms on the table. The Athan Mier will serve me, Hareen. That is given. Yes, we will serve you, but... Hareen half reared out her chair, spilling her tea. What are you doing to me, Aes Sedai? She cried, trembling. This is not fair bargaining. We do nothing, Marana said calmly. She actually managed to drink a swallow of that tea without wincing. You are in the presence of the dragon reborn, Rafella added. The Coromor your prophecy calls you to serve, as I believe. She laid a finger to one round cheek. You said you speak for the mistress of the ships. Does that mean your word is binding on the Athan Mier? Yes, Hareen whispered hoarsely, falling back in her seat.
Oh, it wasn't too bad.
And all to the mistress of the ships herself.
I had both Manula and Casal.
For one of the sea folk to go white in the face, yet staring at Rand.
What was good was the medicated hand we had.
He smiled at Min to share the moment. At last, a people would come to him without fighting every step of the way, or splitting apart like the Aiel. Maybe Min thought he wanted her to help clinch matters, or maybe it was ta'veren. She leaned toward the wave mistress. You will be punished for what happens here today, Hareen, but not so much as you fear, I think. At least, one day you will be the mistress of the ships. Hareen frowned at her, then glanced to her windfinder. She is not Aes Sedai, Shallan said, and Hareen seemed caught between relief and disappointment, until Rafella spoke. Several years ago, I heard reports of a girl with a remarkable ability to see things. Are you she, Min? Min grimaced into her cup, then nodded reluctantly. She always said that the more people knew what she could do, the less good came of it. Glancing across the table at the Aes Sedai, she sighed. Rafella only nodded, but Marana was staring at her, hazel eyes avid in a mask of serenity. No doubt she expected to corner Min as soon as possible and find out what this talent was and how it worked. And no doubt Min expected it too. Rand felt a prickle of irritation. She should have known he would protect her from being bothered. A prickle of irritation and a warmth that he could protect her from that at least. You may trust what Min says, Hareen, Rafella said. The reports I heard say that what she sees always seems to come true. And even if she does not realize it, she has seen something else. Her round face tilted to one side, and a smile curved her mouth. if you will be punished for what happens here, then it must mean you will agree to whatever your Coramor wants. Unless I agree to nothing, Irene blustered. If I make no bargain. Her fists clenched on the tabletop. She had already admitted
most definitely the dab.
She had admitted the sea folk would serve. What I require of you is not onerous, Rand said. He had thought about this since deciding to come. When I want
how you
to carry
doing,
the
bro?
supplies the sea folk will give them. I want to know what is happening in Taraban and Aradaman, and in the lands between.
Morning to you.
Your ships will learn what I want to know. They call in Tanchico and Bandar Eben, and 100 fishing villages and towns between.
At least for me, it's not quite morning yet. It's about to be
the sea folk
2 a.m.
as far west in the Arth Ocean as they can sail. There is a people, the Shonchan, who live beyond the Arth Ocean, and one day they will come to try to conquer us. The sea folk will let me know when.
I hope you're doing good, Blistering.
You require much, Irene muttered bitterly. We know these Shonchan who come from
Definitely
the islands
appreciate
of
you
the
stopping
dead
by
seas
this
from which
late.
no ship returns.
Or this early,
Some of
depending
our
on where
ships
y'all
have
at.
imported theirs. They use the one power as a weapon.
Oh,
you
damn.
require more than you know, Coramor. For once, she did not pause.
Yeah, it's
Some dark
1:53 a.m. here.
No ship of ours has come from there in many months. Ships that sail west vanish.
That club is still popping.
He turned the dragon scepter, made from part of a Shonchan spear, in his hands.
Right.
Could they have returned already? They had been going back once at Falma.
You know what, let's do it, Dab, then.
To remind him that there were more enemies in the world than those he could see. But he had been sure it would take the Shonchan years to recover from their defeat, driven into the sea by the Dragon Reborn and the dead heroes called back by the Horn of Valir. Was the horn still in the White Tower? He knew it had been taken there. Suddenly, he could not bear the confines of the cabin any longer. He fumbled with the latch on the chair arm. It would not open. Gripping the smooth wood, he tore the arm off in splinters with one convulsive heave.
No
We've
shit.
agreed the sea folk will serve me.
That's crazy.
Said, pushing himself up. The low ceiling made him hunch over the table threateningly. The cabin.
You get crazy at that time, huh?
If there is any more to your bargain, Mirana and Rafaela here will see to it with you. Without waiting for an answer, he swung to the door, where Shiva appeared to be muttering to himself.
No shit, that's crazy.
Caught his sleeve and spoke swiftly and low. It would be for the best if you were in. You have seen what your being Severin has done already. With you here, I believe she will continue to reveal what she wants to hide and give agreement.
Weird shit, huh? I would imagine.
He told her harshly. Negotiate. Shiva, come with me. On deck, he drew deep breaths. The cloudful sky was open.
Oh, it's changed a lot. Well, when I was up there, I spent most of my time in Venice.
Flynn and Narishma kept what they were supposed to do. Over an eye on the ship, and the rest on the riverbanks, the city on one side, and the half-rebuilt granaries on the other. A ship in mid-river was a vulnerable place to be if one of the Forsaken decided to strike. For that matter, anywhere was a dangerous place then. Rand could not understand why one of them had not at least tried to destroy the Sun Palace around his ears. Min took his arm, and he gave a start. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have left you. That's all right, she laughed. Mirana is already setting to work. I think she means to get you Harine's best blouse, and maybe her second best as well. The Wave Mistress looks like a rabbit caught between two ferrets. Rand nodded. The sea folk were his, or as good as. He was Severin. He was reborn in the Coramor. The golden sun still burned well short of its noon peak. The day is young yet, men. He could do anything. Would you like to see me settle the rebels? 1,000 crowns to a kiss, they're mine before sunset.
Sitting cross-legged on Rand's bed, men watched him in his shirt sleeves, rooting through the coats in the huge ivory-inlaid wardrobe. How could he all its black, heavy furniture? A part of her thought constantly about moving everything out. Some carved pieces, plain, lightly touched with gilding, and pale draperies and linens that he would find less oppressive. Odd. She had never cared one way or another about furniture or linens. But that one tapestry of a battle, of a lone swordsman surrounded by enemies and about to be overwhelmed, that definitely had to go. Mostly, though, she just watched him. There was such an intent look in his morning blue eyes, and the snowy shirt tightened across the broad of his back when he turned to reach deep into the wardrobe. He had very good legs and marvelous calves, shown off well in dark, close-fitting breeches, with his boots turned down. Sometimes he frowned, combing fingers through dark, reddish hair. No amount of brushing could make it ruly. It always
around
his ears and on the nape of his neck. She was not one of those fool women who toss their brains at a man's feet along with their hearts. It was just that sometimes near him,
it's just in
became a trifle difficult. That was all. Coat after embroidered silk coat came out and was tossed to the floor atop the one he had worn to the Seafolk ship.
Have ice in it, so it's nice and cold.
Be going half so well without his ta'veren presence. If only she had a really useful viewing of the Seafolk. As always, to her eyes, images and colorful auras flickered around him, most gone too quickly to make out, all but one meaningless to her at the moment. That one viewing came and went 100 times a day, and whenever Matt or Perrin were present, it encompassed them too, and sometimes others. A vast shadow lurked over him, swallowing up thousands upon thousands of tiny lights like fireflies that hurled themselves into it in an attempt to fill up the darkness. Today there seemed to be countless tens of thousands of fireflies, but the shadow seemed larger too. Somehow that viewing represented a battle with the shadow, but he almost never wanted to know how it stood. Not that she could really say, except that the shadow always seemed to be winning to one degree or another. She sighed with relief to see the image go. A tiny stab of guilt made her shift her seat on the coverlet. She had not really lied when he asked what viewings she had kept back. Not really. What good to tell him he would almost certainly fail without a woman who was dead and gone? He became bleak too easily as it was. She had to keep his spirits up, make him remember to laugh. I don't think this is a good idea, Rand. Saying that might be a mistake. Men were strange creatures in so many ways. One minute they took reasonable advice, and the next did just the opposite. Deliberately did the opposite, it seemed. For some reason, though, she felt protective toward this towering man who could probably lift her with either hand, and that without his channeling. "It is a wonderful idea," he said, tossing down a blue coat with silver embroidery. "I'm ta'veren, and today it seems to be working in my favor for a change." A green coat with gold embroidery went to the floor. "Wouldn't you rather comfort me again?"
Hell yeah, pure Michigan,
staring
bro.
at her with a silver
Definitely appreciate you stopping by.
In his hands. She hoped she was not blushing. Comforting.
Definitely hope you have a good night, bro.
Ever come from? She wondered silently. The aunts who had raised her were gentle, kind women, but they had strong notions of proper behavior. They had disapproved of her wearing breeches, disapproved of her working in stables, the job she loved best, since it brought her into contact with horses. There was no question what they would think of comfort.
I definitely appreciate you stopping by to show love, brother.
If they ever found out, they would ride all the way from Bear Lawn just to skin her. And him, too, of course. "I need to keep moving while I'm sure it is still working," he said slowly, then turned quite quickly back to the wardrobe. "This will do," he exclaimed, pulling out a plain coat of green wool. "I didn't know this was in there." It was the coat he had worn coming back from Dumai's Wells, and she could see his hands tremble as he remembered. Trying to be casual, she got up and went
around him. About to do another dab.
I love you, was all she said. Through his shirt, she could feel the round scar on the left side. She could recall when he got it as if it were yesterday. That had been the first time she ever held him in her arms while he lay unconscious and near death. His hands pressed against her back, squeezing her tight, squeezing the breath out of her, but then, disappointingly, they fell away. She thought he muttered something about not fair under his breath. Was he thinking about the sea folk while she hugged him? He should be, really. Marana was a grey, yet it was said the sea folk could make a Domani sweat. He should be, really. She thought about kicking him. Gently, he moved her away and began pulling on the coat. Rand, she said firmly, you can't be sure it will have any effect just because it did on Hareen. If you being ta'veren always affected everything, you'd have every ruler kneeling at your feet by now, and the white cloaks too. I'm the dragon reborn, he replied haughtily, and today I can do Scooping up his sword belt, he fastened it around his waist. It bore a plain brass buckle now. The gilded dragon lay atop the coverlet on the bed. Gloves of thin black leather went on the named heads on the backs of his arms, and the heron branded on his palms. But I don't look like it. He spread his arms, smiling. They won't know until it's too late. She almost threw up her hands. You don't look like either. And he would. Askance, as if he was not sure. Rand, as soon as they see the Aiel, they will either run or start fighting. If you won't take any of the eyes to die, please take those Asha marks. One arrow and you're dead, whether you're the dragon reborn or a goat herd. But I am the dragon reborn, Lyn, he said seriously. Just you and me. That is, if you still want to come. You're not going anywhere without me, Randall Thor. She stopped herself from saying he would trip over his own feet if he did. This euphoria was almost as bad as the dark bleakness. Mandera won't like this. She did not know exactly what went on between him and the maidens. Something very peculiar indeed by the things she had seen, but any hope that that might stop him guttered out when he grinned like a small boy evading his mother. She won't know, Nen. He even had a twinkle in his eyes. I do this all the time. He held out a gloved hand, expecting her to jump when he called. There really was nothing to do but straighten her green coat, glance into the stand mirror to make sure of her hair, and take his hand. The trouble was, she was ready to leap if he crooked a finger. She just wanted to make sure he accepted that. In the anteroom, he made a gateway atop the golden rising sun set in the floor, and she let him lead her through onto a hilly forest floor carpeted with dead leaves. A bird flashed away, flaring red wings. A squirrel branch and chittered at them, lashing a furry, white-tipped tail. It was hardly the sort of woods she remembered from near Bearlawn. There were not many real forests anywhere close to the city of Cairhien. Most of the trees stood 4 or 5 or even 10 paces apart. Tall leather leaves and pines, taller oaks, and trees she did not know, running across the flat she and Rand stood on.
Alright. Oh, going to the beach? Hell yeah. I'm gonna call it into this life for tonight. See if I can't lay down and get a little bit of sleep. But I want to thank Aaron for stopping by and everyone keeps stopping by and chilling with me. I definitely appreciate all y'all's support. Till next time, everyone. Yeah, the beach definitely is chill. But until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.